You are listening to 3 Point Lead presented by Loeb's Leads. I am Max Loeb, talking today about the Brandon Aiyuk situation, all the news that broke regarding his contract, his meeting walking in with Jaden Daniels, and potential trades down the line. Two things I think we're overlooking from past situations with the San Francisco 49ers that are going to impact this. But we're also going to go through every single AFC division, the predictions that are currently out for the division, first place through fourth place. We're going to give our 2 cents. You're going to give your 2 cents, and we're going to see how it shakes up against the predictions that are currently out. But before we talk about anything, I want to give a brief shout out to our sponsor, Better Picks. It is my favorite way to enjoy fantasy sports. You can pick more or less for your favorite player stats to win up to 1,000 times your entry. And right now, Better is offering a first deposit match of up to $250 if you go to my socials and join with code LEADS. That's LEADS, all caps on Better Picks. Without further ado, let's get into the episode. So if you did miss it, Brandon Aiyuk reportedly yesterday walked into a meeting with ESPN telling them that I'm going to meet with the 49ers. But when he walked into that meeting with ESPN, there was somebody by his side. It was Jaden Daniels. They played together at Arizona State, right? This long process of agreeing to an extension, skirting around the franchise tag, kind of playing games with each other between Brandon Aiyuk and the San Francisco 49ers continues to go on. But there were 2 really good points that were brought up yesterday across the socials that we need to talk about. The main one, and I keep going back to this, I believe 2 years ago or a year ago, Deebo Samuel was in a similar situation where he was saying, I don't know if they want me here. I kind of want to request a trade. He actually publicly requested a trade, right? And then 3 months later, maybe, he agreed to an extension with San Francisco. So it's important to take all of this with a grain of salt. I think that happens a lot. Obviously, Justin Jefferson wasn't super happy with his contract situation before he signed a mega deal. But it is important to take this with a grain of salt because the San Francisco 49ers obviously have the intention of extending Brandon Aiyuk. It's just a matter of we don't necessarily agree financially where we're at and where you are at. And that is the big thing, I think, with the 49ers. But the other thing to understand that is that the San Francisco 49ers right now, if they were to trade Brandon Aiyuk, don't really have a need, or at least comparative need to what they need now for future assets. This is a team that was in overtime away from winning the Super Bowl last year. A lot of people are predicting this team to win 13-ish games this coming year. Like, they're really good, and they're built to win now in a weaker NFC as well. We can't overlook that. The NFC is weaker than it's ever been. They're built to win now in a weaker conference in a division that they should win. I think they will win. So if you're the San Francisco 49ers, what good does trading Brandon Aiyuk do for you? I don't think it does much good, especially into your title hopes now. Obviously, you draft Ricky Pearsall. You have Deebo Samuel, Juwan Jennings, obviously Kittle, McCaffrey. But you have all of these great playmakers offensively with Brock Purdy still on his rookie contract. We talk about the importance of winning on a rookie contract as well. That's why I think the Houston Texans are going all in, doing things that they are doing. But it blows my mind that it makes sense to look at a mock trade and say, hey, we're going to trade Brandon Aiyuk for a 20-25 second or 2 seconds in the next 2 years, whatever it may be. Like, one, that's value-wise a difficult thing to do. But 2, they don't need those future assets, right? So if I'm the San Francisco 49ers, I'm looking at this situation, I'm looking at Brandon Aiyuk, I'm looking at my team right now, and I'm saying, look, we're built to win now in a weaker conference. Can we hold this out for another year to potentially win? Does Brandon Aiyuk hold out? Probably not. I think he still plays this year. He'd leave a lot of money on the table if, his fifth year? He said, I'm not going to play. I'm going to hold out, kind of like a Le'Veon Bell situation. He'd leave money on the table. We've obviously seen that doesn't work in the past too. But if I'm the San Francisco 49ers, like, I kind of want to hold out. I kind of want to keep pushing for another season if we can't agree eye to eye now, instead of, budging and saying, okay, fine, we'll pay you this amount. We want you here long term, because they have him under contract for 1 more year. They are in a really good spot to win a lot of football games this year. I think it makes a lot of sense for the San Francisco 49ers to kind of push this back. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing right now. Maybe it is a true financial thing. Maybe they don't see eye to eye. But in Brandon Aiyuk's mind, they're far off in terms of what they want. A couple other things that I saw across the internet yesterday about this stuff. One, people are saying Brandon Aiyuk is taking this a little more personally. I mean, sure, you want to say that. You want to say, okay, he's taking this personally. I mean, it's his money, it's his livelihood, so he should take it personally. But two, the Jaden Daniels stuff, like I said, they were teammates at ASU. Reportedly, the Washington Commanders did try to trade for him, didn't like the deal or couldn't agree to terms. So there's some type of interest in bringing Aiyuk to Jaden Daniels to reuniting those guys. Does he go there in free agency if they can't agree to anything? I don't know. But the very strong consensus is that Aiyuk wants to play with Jaden Daniels. He wants his money. And if he doesn't get either of those, he's probably going to hold out. Because, again, he really hasn't showed up to anything this offseason, including minicamp. So, or mandatory minicamp, excuse me. So, it's tough to describe, but I do think the ball's kind of in the 49ers court still to meet Brandon Aiyuk where he's at, but I don't think they're going to do it this year. If you guys are watching on YouTube, make sure you comment your 2 cents on this. And if you're listening on Spotify, we will have shorts and short form content on Instagram, TikTok, whatever it may be. So make sure you give your 2 cents on there too. But I'm really surprised that this is moving the way that it is. I thought the 49ers would budge. I thought the 49ers would pay him. But obviously, if they don't see eye to eye, they're not going to. Moving into our next segment, if you guys are watching on YouTube, this is going to be a very interactive thing for you. If you're listening on Spotify, again, you can go to the short form content on TikTok or Instagram to take part in this. But we're going to do, I have the projected standings from all of the AFC divisions to my left. I'm going to go division by division. I'm going to read off the projected standings. You guys can think about what you like, think about what you don't like. I'm going to give my 2 cents on them. I don't agree with most of these projections, to be honest with you. So I'm going to give my 2 cents. We're going to talk about them. We'll move through starting with the AFC East. This is the toughest one because I do think there's a legitimate argument for 3 of the 4 teams to win this division. I do think it's moderately open, but the way it stands now, the Buffalo Bills are projected first. The New York Jets are projected second. Miami Dolphins projected third. And obviously Patriots projected fourth. I have said this since March. I think this is the Jets division to lose. I think the New York Jets are the best team in this division. I think they're the most complete team. I think they upgraded what they needed to. I think they filled their holes the best as well, because you look at the offseason they shored up both of the tackle positions. At least that's what it seems like. Aaron Rodgers coming back. You assume he's at least moderately healthy. They get another number 2 option in Mike Williams. They have honestly one of the more underrated tight end rooms in the NFL. Breece Hall's coming back. Their defense is obviously very good on a lot of different levels. The Hassan Reddick thing is very interesting. Don't know if he's gonna show up for camp. We wait to see that, but that team is complete. I don't see weak spots on that team. Even the offensive line. Like, I think the offensive line is very much middle of the pack. I think the offensive line is very much a serviceable unit to keep Aaron Rodgers upright. I know we said that last year, like, oh, he'll get sacked. Yeah. And then obviously what happened week 1 happened. But I think this offensive line is noticeably better, especially on the perimeter. I think that's the best team in this division. I mean, Buffalo, Miami, you can go back and forth on that. To me, I'll take Buffalo over Miami because I think Josh Allen does push him over the edge a little bit. But Miami's a team offensively that can strike at any time, that can score a lot of points. Defensively last year, it was really clear to see there was talent, battled a ton of injuries. And to be quite honest with you guys, it was really clear to see the players in that Miami defense didn't buy into what Vic Fangio, their defensive coordinator, was doing. They were pretty outspoken against him. You guys remember the Javon Holland Instagram story? Like, they're pretty outspoken about what Vic Fangio did and how they didn't like it. So I think Miami defensively is probably going to improve. Offensively, they have a lot of really good pieces as well. So I think Miami is still a very good team. And New England fourth, I mean, look, I like the moves they made in the offseason. Does it separate them from those 3 teams? No, I don't think so. But we'll move on to the AFC South. I mean, you guys know I'm very, very outwardly on the Houston Texans to win this division. They are currently projected to be in first, with the Jacksonville Jaguars in second, interestingly enough, Indianapolis Colts in third, Tennessee Titans in fourth. Now, I will say, after I take a sip of my coffee, I will say that the Colts hype train is not warranted in the sense that we think it is. Like, they're a team that, yes, won a good amount of games last year with Gardner Minshew and a beat-up offense, right? Yes, absolutely. I acknowledge that. You're saying now, looking at this team coming back, Anthony Richardson's coming back. They're going to be way better. And I agree. Quarterback is the most important position in the NFL. I'm always somebody who will push back on the wins are not a quarterback stat thing, because I do think the quarterback is that important. Anthony Richardson is an upgrade from Gardner Minshew. But I think we overlook the holes on the roster outside of the quarterback position, because we look at this team again that won, 9 games, 10 games, however many games they won last year, and we're like, okay, yeah, this team's only going to go up if they're getting their quarterback back. They re-signed Michael Pittman, right? Jonathan Taylor's back. I want us to slow down. I think defensively they're solid. I think Grover Stewart is one of the most underrated defensive linemen in the NFL. I think re-signing him was huge. I think they have some good players across their defense. Is it an elite unit to keep up with the teams that pass a lot? Remember this, that pass a lot, like the Houston Texans, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Cincinnati Bengals. I think the New York Jets are going to pass the ball a ton next season. Miami, Kansas City, like, can they keep up with those teams? I don't know. That's the question defensively. But offensively, I think the hype as an overall offense is getting overblown because of one position. Again, it's an important position, and Anthony Richardson is going to be great, especially if you guys play fantasy football. I love Anthony Richardson in fantasy football, but I think it's getting overblown. I do think they finished second in this division. I think they finish above Jacksonville, but to say that they're a sleeper to win the division, I think is a stretch, especially because of how good Houston is. Jacksonville, again, right now projected second in the division. I think they finished third. I mean, I think this is a team that did get better offensively. Obviously, they draft Brian Thomas. They sign Eric Armstead. Like, they got better offensively. And I think Trevor Lawrence is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the NFL. I think the fact that he signed that mega extension makes it even worse. Like, you look at him in the production, you guys always see the comparison graphic with Daniel Jones. You say, what has this guy done in his time in the NFL? And there's very valid points to be made. But I want everybody to watch what he did in the first half of last year, before he injured his knee and before he lost his number one target in Christian Kirk. He was ripping apart the NFL. I believe they were 7-1 or 6-1 or whatever it was. Like, they were winning a lot of games. They were really, really good. They had an offense that was firing on all cylinders. And then obviously, you have to deal with injuries in the NFL. It's how it goes. But they had a team that was playing really good football. Trevor Lawrence was playing really good football. And then he goes down with the injury. Christian Kirk goes down with the injury, I believe in the same game as well. It's a team that people don't really take seriously, that I think they do, especially when you have a guy like Josh Allen on the edge. Like, you got game breakers defensively. Secondary scares me. Game breakers defensively. Really, really solid offense. You can't just pigeonhole yourself into stopping one guy. They got multiple guys you got to stop. I think this is still a pretty solid team. Do they make a wild card spot? I think the AFC is almost too loaded for it, but I do think they finish in third. And the Tennessee Titans, I think they finish in last, but one of my favorite, like, sleeper teams to win more games than you think are the Tennessee Titans. I think offensively, that team could explode. Defensively, I don't know. Again, another team that's secondary, I'm like, I don't know. How do I feel about this? L'Jarius Sneed was a huge, huge upgrade at the corner position, but I'm just like, how are they going to fill out outside of him? You can eliminate one side of the field. Sure, yeah. Like, let's say Houston Texans, if you're the Tennessee Titans, you want to go eliminate one side of the field, Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, go ahead. Go cover Tank Dell. Go cover the other one of the big two. Like, I worry about them with the aerial attack in this division because I think the secondary is their weakest point defensively, but a team that I think could put up a lot of points offensively. They made the right moves in the offseason as well, especially for their offense. I do think that a sleeper team, if you will. We're going to go to the AFC West. This is what bugs me, man. Obviously, the Chiefs are in first. I'm not even going to talk about them. I don't want to belabor a point there. I mean, it's the best team in the division. Arguably the best team in the AFC. We can talk about that another time. But Chiefs 1, Chargers 2. Yeah. Raiders 3, Broncos 4. Broncos 4, I'm with that too. Like, I think I'm not going to call them a dumpster fire because I don't think they are. I think they got some good players on their team. I think, honestly, if it gets to a point where they want to trade a guy like Pat Surtain, they are going to get a crazy, crazy return. So they'll get some future asset pieces. Obviously, they have a rookie quarterback now. I don't think they're built to win a lot of games, to be honest with you guys. But I do think it's a better team defensively than people give them credit for. They forced a lot of turnovers last year. They're a very tough and opportunistic unit. And if you can play opportunistic defensive football, you're going to at least be in some games. But I don't think they're better than Vegas. I don't think they're better than LA. Definitely not better than the Chiefs. And I think most of you guys would agree with me. But I find it really, really difficult to choose between the Chargers and the Raiders for second place in this division because I look at what Vegas did last year with, Josh McDaniels for half the year, Antonio Pierce for half the year. There was very clear, like, culture change. And Antonio Pierce was awesome at the end of the year. You hear the glowing reviews from guys like Max Crosby, Devontae Adams, who I think people overlook the fact that he could have so been on his way out of Vegas. Like, he totally could have up and left because the quarterback he played with in college was there for a year and left. That was a huge reason he went to Vegas. The coaching staff changed. The team was going downhill, and he's towards the back half of his career as a receiver who's still an elite talent. He totally could have up and left, but he's going to stay. He could have demanded a trade. He's going to stay. The quarterback position in Vegas is the toughest for me. I'm a huge Aiden O'Connell guy. I think Aiden O'Connell's a really good player. I think we see him week 1, to be fully honest with you. If he plays with that run game, I think Zamir White is another guy who you look at and say, who is that? Very good at the end of last year, ran really hard. They have a very clear offensive identity with multiple playmakers on the outside. Obviously, they draft Brock Bowers as well. So it's a very clear identity of we're going to try to run the ball. We're going to try to run the ball down your throat. Jackson Powers Johnson as well, don't forget. But we're going to try to run the ball down your throat. We're going to set a tone, and then we need to make plays on the outside. We have the guys to do it. I think offensively, this is a sleeper team offensively. Like, I think this is a team that could put up a lot of points in a hurry if they can run the ball effectively. But defensively is still the big question because the secondary is a huge issue. You have Max Crosby, who will undoubtedly affect the game, cause teams to game plan in different ways. Now you add Christian Wilkins on the defensive line. That's a tough defensive line to game plan for because you can't pigeonhole yourself into stopping one guy. You can't just say, okay, let's stop Max Crosby because Christian Wilkins will take advantage of his matchups. Like, he's going to do that. But the secondary scares me for Vegas. How well can they consistently cover? Schematically, can they continue to put together the efforts and the performances they did last year? Because it was very, very impressive what they did at the end of last year defensively. But that's a tough thing to keep up when you don't have, at least on paper, the talent that some of the other players in the NFL and really in your division have on the perimeter. Like Kansas City, if you're going to roll out Rashee Rice and Marquise Brown against the Raiders secondary, I'm probably going to take them. Denver, if Cortland Sutton's healthy, I'm probably going to take him over any of those Vegas corners. Chargers are tough. I think Josh Palmer's a good player. Would I confidently take him over Vegas? No. Ladd McConkey, I'm very excited to see in the slot too. I think they're going to find new ways to get him the football. But the Raiders secondary scares me. The Chargers offense scares me. Like, I shouldn't say scares me. I'm more fascinated to see what it looks like because they obviously have Justin Herbert, and anytime you have Justin Herbert, you have a chance to win a game. Like, that's how it goes. He's an extremely talented player. Anytime you have a player like that on your team, you look at your team and the other 10 guys in the huddle, and you're like, okay, we have a chance to win. And I think every single week that's going to be the case with the Chargers. Can they play complementary football? Can they play good enough defense to make sure they can continue to run the ball, make sure they don't lose their offensive identity? Because the very clear offensive identity with the Chargers now is run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. They have multiple backs. Gus Edwards is going to have a huge workload, I think, this year. A good offensive line, and they neglected the outside playmaker, which isn't a huge surprise to me. Like, I think it made sense when you look at what Harbaugh does and what the Chargers try to do offensively or will try to do offensively with Harbaugh. They're going to run the ball. Obviously, they took Joe Alt. They're going to try to, again, much like the Raiders, impose their will, put their identity upon you and say, okay, stop us. Now, the Ladd McConkey draft pick, Harbaugh always needs his slot receiver. Like, that's what happened. You look at the past couple of years with Roman Wilson in Michigan. Like, there's a very clear need for that slot receiver that's talented, that's going to demand eyes. We can get into this in another video, but the Chargers have a very clear need for a slot wide receiver to draw the eyes of a defense. When you have a guy in the slot that can go win one-on-one really against any defensive back, you have a matchup advantage that you like, right? And every time you get man coverage, if you're Justin Herbert or you see a matchup that, you know, it's tough to say. You see a matchup that you like on the outside and then you look inside at Ladd McConkey at his matchup and you're like, okay, I like this. Every time you see that, you're going to go to him. And then eventually when you start to motion guys like Ladd McConkey across the field, you buy the eyes of the defense. You can see the coverage. Sometimes linebackers or people inside get distracted by the motion as well. You run the ball the other way or you run the ball with independent. Like, there's a lot of things that slot receiver, that talented slot receiver could unlock. And I think Ladd McConkey was a great addition. It's going to help the run game as much as it's going to help the pass game. But I do think the Raiders are a better team, a more complete team than the Chargers are. So, I mean, the prediction right now on how it sets, without my opinion, Chiefs, Chargers, Raiders, Broncos. I think Chiefs, Raiders, Chargers, Broncos. I think the Raiders go 2, Chargers go 3. Let's finish with the AFC North. I mean, this division, guys, like, Your guess is as good as mine. When I look at the teams in this division, there's no reason that, like, if you were to tell me a different order than what is on my screen to my left right now, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I wouldn't disagree. Right now, it's Baltimore, Cincy, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. Baltimore should be the favorites. I do think they should. I think you can argue any of the last three to go second, though, because obviously, Cincy is Joe Burrow. You don't know what's going to happen with T. Higgins. He signed his franchise tag. Does he demand a trade? I don't know. I think he plays, but he signed his franchise tag, so he's there and ready to play. Really good offense. Defensively, I wonder how consistently they can keep things up, because this is a team that's very, very clearly going to try to impose their will offensively in a different way than like the Chargers, than the Raiders. They're going to try to beat you through the air. And they've done that in the past, and they obviously drafted a guy like Jermaine Burton to fill Tyler Boyd's role. Their offense, to me at least, isn't going to be super different than it has been. And now you had Zach Moss, who I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for this. I personally think Zach Moss is an upgrade over Joe Mixon at this point in their career. I think Zach Moss is a very good back, a very, very explosive player that can do a lot of things. And you have Chase Brown now. This offense is going to be really good, assuming they can keep Joe Burrow upright. But defensively, can you do enough to stop the run against these teams? Because Pittsburgh is going to try to run the ball so much. I will talk about them in a couple minutes, but the Steelers are going to try to run the ball a ton, guys, a ton. That's Arthur Smith's identity. You have two good backs in Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. Like, everything is going to fit into that scheme where the Steelers are going to try to run the ball. Now you're Cincinnati without your best run stopper, who left and went to Detroit. Can you stop that? Baltimore, in its own entity, is going to run the ball in so many different ways. Cleveland, assuming Nick Chubb is back, is going to run the ball super effectively. And even if Chubb is not back, they're still going to run the ball, period. Like, I worry about that. I worry about that getting behind the chains defensively. Like, I worry about other teams getting ahead of the chains. And then, outside of Cam Taylor-Britt, like, I worry about the talent they have on the outside. I don't think there's a ton of dominant alpha wide receivers in the AFC North. I think George Pickens, outside of the Bengals, I think George Pickens is probably Amari Cooper or George Pickens, the best two on the outside of the Bengals receivers. But there aren't a ton of guys that you have to worry about on the outside, at least from what it seems like right now. So I think the Bengals can get away with that. But I look at a team like the Browns, who arguably has the best defense in the AFC. Some would say the NFL, who was really, really good last year, as beat up as they were. I am almost more confident in the Browns winning more games than the Bengals are. So we'll get to the official prediction after this, but I'm more confident in the Browns. I think offensively, they do a lot of really good things as well. If their offensive line is healthy, which it really wasn't at all last year, they're going to be in a really, really good spot when they have to play teams with the Bengals, Steelers, Ravens with a good pass rush. It all hinges on Deshaun Watson for Cleveland. We'd be lying if we didn't agree with that, but it all hinges on Deshaun Watson. Everything has been put in place, from the coaching staff to the playmakers around him. I think people overlooked the Jerry Jeudy acquisition, to make sure he is in a good spot. Like, there's no reason this Browns offense should not score 23, 24 a game. I don't see a reason or a world where they don't, especially if you play complementary football on the other side. And like I said, they arguably have the best defense in the AFC. I'm not going to go NFL, but I do think they have the best in the AFC. Really no weak points there either, especially if their linebacker play continues. But the Pittsburgh Steelers are the really interesting one to me, because Arthur Smith, I think, is going to unlock that offense in a new way. I think they're going to have a new identity. They're going to run the ball a ton. They're going to get, what I think is their second most talented offensive player, Jalen Warren, the football more in different ways. Najee Harris is going to have a newer role where him and Warren pretty much split. We saw towards the end of last year too. But I think that offense in Pittsburgh is going to look different. How often does George Pickens get the ball? You're going to have to look back at the A.J. Brown seasons in Tennessee to get a true sense of what that could be. But they have a really good talent. Roman Wilson, to me, is another guy who's, he's really good. And I think he's going to add a new dimension to that offense too, because you had Deontay Johnson, who was kind of an inside guy, outside guy. Roman Wilson is a true inside guy who, again, much like Ladd McConkey, will beat a lot of the guys across from him in one-on-ones. You look at the AFC North inside nickel guys, and it's a talented group. Like, there's some good inside nickel corners in there, but Roman Wilson, I think, is another really, really good talent that's going to cause a lot of problems for that defense. And obviously, defensively, Pittsburgh is the biggest thing because up front, they're great. They're undeniably one of the best defensive lines in the NFL, if not the best defensive line in the NFL. They get after the quarterback. They will stop the run with Cam Hayward in there, assuming he's healthy. But it's the back seven that I not worry about, but I'm curious about because Joey Porter Jr. was very good last year. And you could see that. You also didn't have Minkah Fitzpatrick for, I believe, like a third of the season, almost a third of the season, which was a huge loss, one, because of talent, but two, because he's your defensive leader. But it's the linebacker stuff that I'm most curious about. The Patrick Queen acquisition was huge. Like, you look at them now, honestly, I hate to make this comparison, but this Steelers defense reminds me of the Browns defense from last year. Like, some question marks-ish in the secondary, a really, really good, aggressive will linebacker with, some talent around him, but a defensive line that's going to keep you honest, the defensive line that is going to be the stalwart, the strongest point of your defense. Like, this Steelers defense reminds me a lot of the Browns defense from last year. And that Browns defense, I'm not going to say won them games, but did a lot to win them games. They really, really did. So I'm very, very curious as it comes to the predictions right now. Without my opinion, it's Ravens, Bengals, Browns, Steelers. Gosh, this is tough. I'm probably going to go Ravens, Browns, Bengals, Steelers, but I would be shocked if any of these teams are separated by more than 2 games. Like, I think the Ravens and who are at last place Steelers, like, I don't think there'll be more than 3 games between them. Like, it's going to be a very, very close race to the top in the AFC North, much like it is in most divisions, but the AFC North especially. Like, there's a reason they picked him for Hard Knocks. There's a reason people, including myself, are saying, hey, 4 teams from the same division don't often make the playoffs, but there's a chance that it happens this year. There is certainly a reason why. But let me know what you guys think. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and make sure you give me your 2 cents on these division predictions as well. We'll do the NFC in an episode down the line as well. If you're listening on Spotify, I appreciate you guys on there as well. Make sure you're following and give the podcast 5 stars if you haven't already. And then you can go to the social clips on TikTok, Instagram, whatever it may be, to give me your 2 cents on these predictions. But I am very, very excited to see how the AFC shakes out. It's going to be a very competitive conference this year. And I think outside of the division winners, when you look at the wild card teams, there's like 6 or 7 of them, and obviously only 3 make it. So that is going to be the best part to me. But I appreciate you guys watching and listening. We will see you next time.